all my life. And I think that's why I couldn't stay sober. I was so uncomfortable in my own skin and had such a lack of self-worth. I didn't think I was a lovable, likable person into my 40s. So today, to have some comfort, most of the time I don't think I'm stupid. Like I get, oh, people like me sometimes. There's people who don't, and I'm even okay with that. To be comfortable most of the time is pretty, I think it's those two things, the freedom and being okay in my own skin.
Hey, sober people and sober adjacent people. Welcome to I Have 12 Questions. I'm Amanda Patton, your host, a leading expert on nothing. However, I am in recovery and I love it so much so that I launched this podcast where we get to talk to people who are trudging the road to happy freaking destiny across all the different ways that people get there. So while this is definitely through the lens of recovery and sobriety, the stories and the themes that we'll be covering are universally human. So love, loss, grief, excitement, parenting, outside issues, purpose, God stuff, whatever. In the words of the great Ted Lasso by way of Walt Whitman, I want to be curious, not judgmental. So like I said, we'll be talking to people in recovery. We're going to be talking to experts and practitioners who help those people along their path in recovery. And we're just really excited to hear people tell their stories and to be inspired by them and to create a community of support for everybody in recovery and people who know and love people who struggle with addiction issues and whatnot. So anyways, we're so glad you're here and thanks for listening. Hey listeners, just a quick disclaimer before we get into the interview. These episodes may contain adult language and subject matter that's not appropriate for all audiences. Also, we are not doctors or psychiatrists, so what we share on these episodes is certainly not to be considered medical or psychological advice, just our own personal experiences, which we hope will be helpful to others on a similar quest. So that's it, and thanks for listening. Hey, sober family and our entire listener community. Our next guest is someone that I met when I lived in Denver, and she's one of the funniest and most unassuming people ever. I nicknamed her Handler soon. I don't think you even knew I had nicknamed you Handler. You were in my phone as that. And I
think I knew that at one point.
Okay. Soon after being around her, because she's so funny and doesn't even try to be. She's sober. She's a mom, a wife, just a woman doing the deal. And one of my favorite things about her is her honesty. I do not like it when people kind of fake things. And so when I meet someone who's just real, it makes me feel at ease. We also love gangsta rap and questionable lyrics and, things that a lot of people would turn their nose up at. So that kind of bonds us, I think, as well. And her episode will be available on November 15th, wherever you get your podcast and or YouTube. And thanks for supporting the show. And you can always get all the links to all the platforms at IHave12questions.com. So Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to see you.
So good to see you. We've texted, but we haven't literally seen each other in so long.
I know.
Actually, you did send me a picture of yourself. What's it called? Dry?
What is it?
The thing where you dry your hair with
I can't remember what it's called. It's a dumb name, yeah.
Dry
it's a dumb name, but yeah. Something like that, yeah. I don't think it's that dirty. It's not dry floppy.
It's something ridiculous. So if your life had a theme song, what would it be and why?
Okay, so I had one, and then my boy Jelly just came out with a new album. And it's the one I shared with you yesterday.
Yes.
What's Wrong With Me?
What's Wrong With Me?
So I wrote down the start of the lyrics are, trust me, I don't know the first bit about being flawless and perfect. If only you knew all the worthless I fought. And so then the song is just about him, like, learning to live with himself and getting okay with who he is and seeing what's wrong with him and being okay with it. Like, everything about that song describes my life.
I love.
And then I couldn't. Yeah. And I thought that, like, he just speaks to everyone like that. Like, everyone feels it like that. I played that song for my husband and my daughter, and they were kind of like, no, I don't get it, but I think he speaks my language. And so everything he sings just, like, hits home. And then I could not go with just one because there had to be a rap song on there.
Yeah.
So I start almost every day with "Girls in the Hood" by Megan Thee Stallion.
Yes.
It doesn't describe my life at all. It's totally not my life, but it's the life I want. Like, I want that kind of confidence. So I start
Is that
my day
where
with
she's
it.
like, I'm tired of motherfuckers trying to tell me how to live? Is that,
Yep.
that's how it starts?
Literally opens with "Fuck being good, I'm a bad bitch."
Yes.
Yes.
It's so funny
That's the
because
one.
when I hear that, I feel so empowered too, because I did try to be that bad bitch for a while, and it was like super destructive, right? And it was kind of fun because I had tried to be good for so long, and I never felt like that's who I really was, and so I just let it out of the cage, and I did everything I wanted to do, and it was dark days, there at the end.
Right.
And so now I'm back to being what I would consider a Girl Scout, compared to like how I kind of want to be sometimes. And it's just so weird, like that.
Right.
That song reminds me, like, you are a bad bitch, and I am tired of people trying to tell me how to live.
Yep.
But then there's that adulting thing of like, we have to make choices that aren't always what we want, right? It's like what we need to be doing. And
Right.
as mom and all the things that we do and being in recovery, and, even I think I'll have 11 years in December. And I was thinking the other day, like, I still have days where I just want to just be like, fuck it. This is so boring. I feel so restless. Those old, but then I remember what it gets to, right? Like, sometimes that is fun for a while, and then it gets to a place that is just so dark for me. And so, but that kind of song, it's like you get to live vicariously for a minute. Plus, I just love her.
Well, and I think that there can be a healthy part of that too, though, like of not, because I can also do what I think everybody else wants me to be doing, be the person I would think everybody else wants, like not just being responsible like I need to be, but then taking it to the extreme of what does everybody else want from me,
right?
And just not being very authentic, or thinking who I am isn't okay. So that would kind of be the healthy version of that.
It's so true. It's like the middle path that, and we talk about in meetings all the time of how it's like that black or white, all or nothing kind of thing. And that really isn't what it has to be. There is something in the middle, and I don't have to be a doormat or a people pleaser, but I can't just do what I want when I want all the time. And so trying to find that. No, that's a perfect combo for you. That's fitting. So I know a lot of your story just because I know you personally, and I've sat in many meetings with you, but can you kind of take us back through what it was like for you? First of all, what's your sober date? If you feel like sharing, if not, who cares? But and then what it was like for you and your active addiction.
So my sober date is 7/23/21. So I've been sober for a little over 3 years. I thought about last night when I went to my first meeting, and it was 34 years ago. So I did not come in 3 years ago. You and I met a lot longer than 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So, to kind of, without going through all of it, I went through treatment the first time in 8th grade. So it was alcohol was a problem for me from the beginning.
Yeah.
I drank alcoholically, had the obsession from the first time I drank. And shortly after Jeb and I got married, I think we were married less than a year, and I got sober, and I got sober for him, and I stayed sober for 11 years and ended up drinking again. And really from that time until 3 years ago, I really struggled to stay sober. And there were even periods where I had like a year. I don't know if I got more than that a couple times or not. But so it wasn't just like constant drinking. It was in and out, in and out. Sometimes with like fairly long periods, like a year or so. And maybe the last, I'll say, couple years of my drinking, like I just couldn't stay sober for any long period of time. It was dark. It was lonely. Like it felt like a prison. And I wanted to stop, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I share this because I kind of, knowing my experience, there can be, I think, like a coldness towards people who just can't seem to fucking get it, right? Like,
Yeah.
that whole, I remember people saying you want to drink more than you want to stay sober. And it was like, I know. And I don't
Yeah.
want that, but I can't, like, I don't know what to do about that.
Right.
And it was kind of like, if you want it enough, you'll do it. And I wanted to stop. And I, like, the obsession was so strong.
Yeah.
And so I had a sponsor who, you know, she told me at one point, she was like, Jen, I don't know how to help you. She said, I see you working the steps. Like, we're working the steps together. And so she was like, I don't know how to help you, but I'm going to be with you. I am here. And she stuck with me through it. And it wasn't like a coddling or it wasn't like an enabling, but it was, I'm going to continue to work with you as long as you keep trying. And I went to treatment in Arizona, and I'd been to treatment before, but it was more kind of a like, here's an introduction to the 12 steps kind of thing, kind of get you away from the alcohol for a while. And the day after my grandma's funeral in Kansas City, Jeb and my dad and two of my aunts sat me down and said, like, you got to go to treatment. I'd gotten in a fight with my dad the night before, the day of my grandma's funeral. And they said, you need to go to treatment. And they already had a plan of, you know, they had 2 places picked out. And they said, you got deeper shit you need to deal with. Because we've seen that you're doing what you need to do and you're still struggling. And so I went to this place called Sabino in Arizona, and I ended up going twice. Like, I went and then I went back like maybe a month or 2 later. And they deal with like trauma and stuff like that. And I think that's why I couldn't stay sober, is I had a lot of stuff that I said didn't matter. You know, it was a long time ago. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I think that's why I was doing everything in AA, and it just wasn't enough. Like, I had shit I had to work out. And I think that's why today I'm able to be comfortable in sobriety, is because I started working on that stuff. Sorry, I got 4 kids. I don't know if you heard that, but like, nobody's being murdered in the background. It's just a teenager.
Oh my God, I forgot you. I knew you had
God only knows what you're going to hear. I apologize for anything you may hear.
You should not apologize. If my dogs are barking, I'm just going to be like, yeah, it is. It is what it is. So, and I love that you bring that up, because, you know, one of the reasons I started this podcast was because I wanted to hear all the people's experiences, not just 12-step stuff. And there's a lot of secular people, and people like don't want to get down with the God thing. And the younger generation doesn't want to hear about certain things. And they think AA is antiquated and misogynistic, and they don't want to have any part of that. Some people join drum circles. Some people just go to therapy and work it out that way, right, and decide, or they're just sober curious and they don't like their relationship with alcohol, and they're just trying to figure out, like, why is this such a thing for me? Why do I need it now? It used to be fun, and now I'm starting, but it hasn't caused any real consequences in their lives. They just don't like how it feels. And so, right, looking at all those different things, but some of the traditional groups can be kind of dogmatic around medication or outside help or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that, you know, we all need to stay open about. Sometimes you need more than just the program. And I'm right, a huge proponent of therapy. I had traumas that I needed to work through, that steps just weren't gonna, I needed to work with a professional and a group of people who'd been through that same type of trauma. It was different, and it was pinpointed to that. So I hear you, and I'm, you know, glad. And also medications or different things that people need. I just wish we would remove any shame or stigma. And I think we're getting better as a society over time about talking about this stuff and everything. But it's not some magical thing of like, work these steps and you'll be happy and you'll be healed. I mean, that's not how it, all we're doing, in my opinion, is if you went into the ER, they're going to stop the hemorrhaging before they talk to you about stitches or surgery. And for me, and I had to stop putting everything into my body so that I could at least get clear. And then I started to realize what I needed, therapy and all these other things, in addition to my program, the fellowship, sponsorship, step work, all the things. And a lot of people.
And I didn't know I needed that.
Yeah, me neither. I thought I was just having fun.
Other people did. I was like, I think I'm fine. Like, I don't have trauma. Like, I don't even.
Well, and like you said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was a long time ago. And I had done the same thing, especially around just personally, or especially around sexual assault. I would never call it that. I wouldn't call it rape. I wouldn't call it what it was, because in my mind, I didn't want to be a victim, and I wasn't going to talk about it. And we don't need to talk about that. And I just wasn't going to do that. And later I needed to show myself some compassion and call it what it really was and deal with whatever that did. And I wouldn't even acknowledge it, much less deal with it. So I think that's one example of many things. People have all kinds of PTSD and family stuff, and people coming back from war, and all kinds of, stuff. And the drinking is a symptom, and I just didn't get that yet. It took me about 6 months of having clear mind and body of drugs and alcohol to start to realize, I'm sicker than I realized. I needed more help than I thought, which was fine, right? At least I was sober enough to be willing to do it. But I love that you brought that up, because people need to know that, not only is it okay, it's necessary sometimes to go get outside help. Speaking of, though, you're now in the counseling environment and working towards, doing that for a living. You're already doing it for a living.
I just do it for free right now.
Yeah. What is that like? I mean, are you more credible with people because you've been through it? What is your experience like? Just tell us about that.
So I think that I initially started off at a treatment center, and yes, I think that that gave me some credibility, because it wasn't like, oh, I'm just talking to you from something I learned in a book. Like, it was talking to them about my own experience.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing community counseling. I deal with addiction a little bit. I mean, that's kind of, people come in with all kinds of things. I think just my experience of having just gone through some shit, not even just the addiction part of it, but I hope that makes me more real with people, because I never want to be in there as the expert, or come off as having all the answers, or being condescending. I'm here because I got my shit together, because that's not it. And so what I hope is that I can go in there and, because I don't share my own stuff in there, but just maybe even in my tone, just because I've experienced it, I hope that they can kind of feel my empathy and know that there's no judgment when they're in the room with me. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. And it's the only reason, for me, it was the only reason that AA was an opening for me, because the people in that room weren't judging. They had been through the same stuff. And so I felt at ease. I didn't feel like I needed to defend myself or anything. I could just say it and be like, okay. And people laughed or nodded. And I was like, oh, this is different, because my family was pissed off. My work was pissed off. I had doctors and therapists and people telling me what is wrong with you? What are you doing? Why can't you get it together? So I was in this constant defensive mode. And then when I was around people who had been through it, it opened something for me, to where, and I couldn't stay sober, and I was in and out. I have a fishbowl here full of desire chips. It took years. I started going in 2005. I got sober in 2013. I did the same thing I had a sponsor. I was working steps. I was picking up desire chips, and I went to treatment several times. I went to jail 4 times. I definitely tried all the different ways. And I wasn't ready. I was not ready. And I needed more than just what the program had to offer. And it took me a while to figure that out. But people never were mean to me about it. Like you said, they didn't judge me. I had people that were
oh man, I feel like people were mean to me.
You did?
Oh yeah, I've had it. Yeah. Over the years, for sure.
Yeah. They just give up on you. You can't get it.
Either kind of giving up, or just it's this idea of like tough love. And I think that, like if we coddle somebody when they come in, and like, that's not what I'm looking for, right? Like I wasn't looking for that either. It's
No.
not who I am. It wasn't like, just comfort me. Um, but yeah, I think people can be, and I still see it, only now I speak up, like I say stuff, um, because people, it's like they forget where they came from. Like
Yes.
that was you, whether you went back out or not after you came in. There was a time when you couldn't fucking stop drinking either.
Yes.
So I don't. I think it's unfortunate that people seem to forget that, like that was them.
Yeah.
And I think, and so yeah, I think people can be really cold about it and think that they're enabling if they, that they need to be a hard ass. Like, people don't feel like shit enough when they've walked back into those rooms, right? Like,
Yes.
they already feel like shit. You need a
Yes.
place where you can go. And I'm not talking about like, oh, poor baby, I'm so sorry that happened to you. But yeah, like, welcome back. And I
Yeah.
have no idea you know, who's going to be the person that's going to make it or not, because
Yeah.
we never know. And I think as long as somebody can get back in there,
Yes.
and we're not guaranteed that, but if they make it back in there, then they've got a chance.
Yeah.
And I just feel really strongly about that.
No, I do too. And I'm pretty vocal about it as well, in terms of, um, even sponsees that just weren't ready, and they kept, standing me up for meetings, or they kept relapsing and they weren't doing their stuff or whatever. And it was like, I finally would say, I am here when you're ready. Like, I will never leave you. I will always be here. You have my number, you know where to find me, but I'm not going to sit here and make you feel bad because you're not ready either. Right. Like, it's,
Right.
um, because one of my sponsors said the same thing to me. She was just like, you're just not ready, and I love you and I want you to be sober, but I want you to be sober more than you want you to be sober. And until you want it more than I do, like, this is never going to work. And I was in that place where I was trying to stay sober for other people at that point. Like you said, you got sober for Jeb. I was getting sober for my daughter, my family, work,
Right.
practical reasons. It wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
because it was, and she loved me enough to tell me the truth, but not to abandon me either.
Right.
And so that's a huge thing. And I think, like, some of the old school people, it's like, sit down, shut up, don't say anything if you're
Right.
new, and all this like old fashioned stuff. And that is the last thing we need. Like you said, we already have so much shame and so much
Mm-hmm.
self-loathing. We're stuck on that merry-go-round and we can't get off. And if you walk into judgment, then I don't know, that probably sends a lot of people right back out. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, well, how would you say that sobriety has changed your parenting?
Um, so it's kind of weird because I was sober when my kids were born, right? Like, and I'd been sober for a while when they were born, and I
Yeah.
was sober into their life. So it wasn't like I raised my kids drunk and then got sober and had this totally
Right.
different experience. What I would say, as far as kind of where I'm at now compared to when I was either drinking or trying to get sober, is just being present. Um, that drinking took precedence over everything. Like,
Mhm.
whether I could say that Jeb and the kids were the most important thing, but I would do anything to get a drink. And I was not someone who just kind of did it sometimes, right? Like, who could go several days. I woke up and drank. Like, I couldn't stop. And um, so I think being present for them,
Yeah.
and or even, there were times too, and then I'm with them and I just want to fucking drink so bad, right? And
Mhm.
so whether it's because I'm wanting to drink or because I'm checked out because I'd already drank, like, I just wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was there physically. And I never got that when Jeb would talk about that. I'm like, I'm here. What do you want? Um,
Yeah.
and I thought he had really unreasonable expectations. But now, it is, I think parenting is like the most painful. It is the best thing, and it is the most painful thing I've ever
Oh,
done.
girl.
And I am present, though, for all of it, right? Like, good and bad, whether I want to be or not. Um, I'm there for it. And I also know that if any, like today, I know that if anybody calls me, especially my kids, like I am sober to be able to be there.
Yeah.
Middle of the night,
Well,
whenever it is, I'm there.
that's one of the things I was thinking about. One of the reasons I wanted to ask this question of you specifically is because I know that one of your children was going through some really, really hard stuff for an
Mm-hmm.
extended period of time. And
Yeah.
I'm not comparing that to addiction, but it has its own set of challenges. And when you're trying different things and it's not working, and the person who's going through it wants it to be better, and it's not getting better. And to me, that feels the same, right? And you're on the other side of that, trying to help your kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, a lot of people think that drinking is a choice. And I guess it is, but at the same time, when you're in it, it doesn't feel like a
When
choice.
you're
Like
in it, I don't think it is.
it's
Yeah.
a compulsion. Like you can't not
Mm-hmm.
do it. Like people don't get it. Even in retrospect, I look at it and go, why didn't I just not do it? But I remember the feeling I couldn't function even anymore. And so, but when you're in a spot where, one of your kids was at that point where it's not even a choice they're making, right? It's something that's
Mm-hmm.
happening to them.
Right.
And so I would assume that some parents come from a tough love perspective of like, suck it up. What's wrong with you? Like, or when someone's depressed, people are like, cheer up. You'll be fine. You have so
Right.
much to be grateful for. Like stupid shit that people say to people to be helpful,
Uh-huh.
and it's not
Right.
helpful at all. And like, do you think that what you've been through and everything you've learned, and when I say recovery, I mean everything,
Right.
counseling, 12-step treatment, all the different things that you do to keep yourself, healthy and present. Do you think that helped in that situation with your child that was struggling in terms of, you know, being able to keep trying
I
different things and all that?
I think that and she's doing really well today. And then we've also had other kids who have had others the same, different but the same, right?
Yeah, yeah,
What I think it does, because when I was that age, I was in the same spot. Like I was not. I went to treatment in 8th grade. I was not okay.
yeah, yeah,
So in my high school years, like I was suicidal through all of it. And so I try to let them know, like I understand.
yeah.
Um, like I was there, and I know they look at me, right? Like I'm 47. She doesn't get it. She's old. She was like, um,
So
that's how they see it. um, and so, but to let them know, like I do get it, and I'm not mad, and I'm not judging, because I had so much shame about my struggles as a kid. Like I was so ashamed of it into adulthood. Like I'm still trying to let some of that stuff go, the
yeah,
embarrassment of it. And so I try to let them know, like, that I don't judge them. And I think it does give me an understanding of what they're going through,
yeah.
that I might be tougher on them or less compassionate if I didn't know what it was like.
Yeah, because from the outside looking in, when someone's going through that, whether it's addiction or other stuff, you look at that person and you're just like, what? Just snap out of it, right? It's
Ah,
hard,
yeah.
and yeah, just stop doing that,
Get your ass
and
out of bed. Yes.
right, right, get it together. What's your problem? And it's usually because I don't know how to help. And I feel frustrated. And so I want to fix
Mhm.
it. And because I can't fix it, I get frustrated with the person or
Right.
and I think when you're talking about all of that, it's, back in the day, I'll be 49 soon, so we're about the same age. But when we were raised, parents didn't talk about, or my parents didn't talk about feelings. You didn't go to counseling. You didn't like have behavioral things, didn't have names and medications and psychotherapy the way it is now, where parents are like, okay, what can we do to help? Right.
Right.
They were just like, what is wrong with you? Like, suck it up. You'll be fine.
Right.
Um, and, and so that made me feel bad. It made me feel ashamed and embarrassed that
Mhm.
something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't fix it and they didn't know how to fix it. And so it was just, you know, um, I had to just stuff it. Right. And like pretend to be happy all the time. And which makes it even worse. Right. Because you're constantly out of alignment with yourself, especially as a kid. You really don't know that that's what's going on. So
And I
what?
did the opposite. I acted out and then spent all these years being so embarrassed and ashamed about like
Yeah,
how I perceived my behavior as a kid.
yeah, Yeah. And all you were doing was coping, and a lot of people, and I love it when I hear stuff like that in meetings about like it does nothing to beat yourself up for stuff that we did in the past. Like we were literally surviving,
Right.
and I wouldn't take it back because I think sometimes looking back at that, it was the reason I survived. I needed to numb, I needed to act out, I guess, to get through whatever. But in retrospect, it is hard to look at. And now instead of judgment toward myself, I have compassion. Like I just want to hug
Right.
my younger self and be like, I'm so sorry that you didn't have that. It's so
I'm
sad.
laughing because everyone who knows me, like, here's where I'm at with that. Is like, it's so true, right? And I get that that's true and necessary, but like any therapist, my sponsor, they know anytime they say like anything about my younger self or any that I'm gonna be like,
Me
roll
too.
my eyes.
I'm like,
It's like
because
I do buy it, like it's true, but
yes,
also stop. I
I
can't
know.
say it out loud.
I've had to write so many letters to my 9-year-old self, and it's so embarrassing.
Uh-huh.
And I roll my eyes because we're kind of like tough, right? Like we're like, oh, okay, oh, it's just too ooey gooey. But then there are these moments where it's like when I see my niece struggling, like let's say, or someone else, I do
Hmm.
feel all of this like compassion. And
Hmm.
it was so weird that I didn't look at myself like that. I was so mean to myself and
Right.
judgmental instead of
Right.
being like, oh my God, she needs help. Right. And so, but to this day, my therapist Pam is like, she knows I hate stuff like that. Cause I'm like, this is so cheesy. Don't say that. Um,
Right.
but it is
Right.
true. So we're,
And
yeah,
okay, I'll do it.
yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it if you say it's going to help. So, what do you think has
Uh-huh.
been the best part of this change for you, like in your life? What's the best part, best result of getting?
Um, I think it's the freedom. Like freedom is probably one of the but when I think about how tied I was, like with the compulsion and not being able to stop drinking, like even for so long in sobriety, like I was never comfortable being sober.
Yeah,
And so there's the freedom of not having, of not drinking. And then there's also still this freedom though of the fact that today, like that obsession has been removed. The, the last time I drank, and this is, it's so describes the way I drank. Like, I had called my dad the night before and I'd been trying to find a way to get some medication because I wanted to stop and I couldn't. Like I was about to lose my marriage, lose everything, and still couldn't stop.
yeah,
And so I knew if I called my dad, he would come through for me. He knows enough people. He would, and I was drunk. I called him and I said, like, can you help me find someone who can do a Vivitrol shot? And he found someone for the next morning. And I my last drink was in the bathroom of that clinic because I was in there like just slamming drinks. I think I had like one or two. I think it was one while I was in that bathroom. Had it in my purse, got it out, and um, like I drank in so many bathrooms, so it's only like bathrooms, my
yeah,
basement, never glamorous.
yeah,
Go to the movies, drink in the bathroom, the airport, whatever. Um, and so, and then so that like sums it up for me. But then like just that's how it was. Like it was so like I have to have it, and so
yeah,
to be free from that and not even thinking about it, um, and then even like that in itself is enough. Like that's an amazing gift from God to
yeah,
not have that anymore.
yeah,
Um, but I think too, like I'm starting to get comfortable with myself. I mean, all my life, like, and I think that's why I couldn't stay sober. I was so uncomfortable in my own skin and had such a lack of self-worth. Like I just I didn't think I was a lovable, likable person. Like into my 40s. And so today to have some comfort, most of the time I don't think I'm stupid. Like I still get it. But I'm like, I think, like I get, oh, people like me sometimes. There's people who don't, and I'm even okay with that. Um, and so to just be like to be comfortable most of the time is pretty. I think it's those two things: the freedom
yeah.
and
That's
being okay in my own skin.
It's such a beautiful thing, though. It's so simple. It sounds so simple. And I guess, I don't know if normal people just have that naturally, or maybe they don't and we just think they do or what, but like those things are not available in active addiction. And unless
Right.
you've been there, you just don't know what that feels like. And from the outside looking in, when I met you, I was just like, she is one of the smartest, funniest, cutest, like people ever in the world. I'm serious. And so to think that you would see yourself in a way that wasn't that is weird to me. That's
Right.
confusing.
And I mean, at that time too, like at that time, that's where I was.
Yeah, but you
Yeah.
always used humor. You were so funny. So I was like, she is just so hilarious. And, but at the same time, I understand that too, because I've had my own self perception that didn't match with what other people saw. And then it made me just feel like even more of an imposter because I was like, you think I'm like that and I know how I really am. And,
Right.
that just constant. And I still to this day, I don't really know. That stuff was started way before drinking and drugs and all that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that was stuff that was early in my life. And so I love that, just the freedom and the ability to like be comfortable. What would you say is the hardest part of this change?
I mean, there's like, I think the work can be hard sometimes, right? Like it's uncomfortable. But when I think about like one of the places where I struggle the most, is that I still can feel sort of like awkward and kind of uptight. And I think about mostly if like vacation, or my husband and I went and listened to music a month or two ago, and there are times where I'm very aware of how I can't just let go. Like
Yeah,
it's and knowing that if I were to drink, that would fix that, right? And I think even today it would fix that. It would go away for a while.
yeah,
But I know I don't lie to myself about, like, it's worth the trade-off. And I think that it's just a place still that I need. It just means I have some work to do there.
yeah,
Um, for the most part, like we can go to Christmas parties or, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I don't wish I was drinking. Like I can be comfortable enough at that stuff.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, there's times where I notice that I just can't fully let go. And I think that it would be nice to be able to do that.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people can do that sober. I'm not there yet.
yeah. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but I hear what you're saying, and there is still that little switch in the back of my head that knows that there is an immediate fix, right? And
Mhm.
it's available to me. Just because I'm sober doesn't mean I can't change my mind. So like I know it's
Right.
available to me. But I also now, I guess the difference is there's this buffer now between the thought and the action. And
Right.
while I would love that momentary relief, I know damn well where it's going to go. And like, I just
Right.
don't want to be there again.
Yeah, it's not worth
Um,
it.
it's not worth it. But it doesn't take away the fact that when I've had a long work week or I'm stressed or different things are going on, I still do want to change how I feel sometimes. I still do want
Yeah.
to escape. I want to check out. And
Yep.
when you have kids and work and this and that, it's never ending. There's never a moment where you're not needed or busy or doing the thing. And
Right.
we can't get into self-pity about that because we have wonderful lives. But at the same time, every now and then it's like, how do I blow off steam? Like,
Right.
or like you're saying, when I'm on vacation or I'm somewhere that's supposed to be fun, my brain is like, well, what about, like, I guess just because we were used to kind of medicating. Um,
Right.
and my mind, it's funny because my mind will tell me like, it would be so much more fun if you had, XYZ. I mean, yeah, for
Right.
15 minutes. And then it would be like,
Until
jail.
I destroy this entire vacation.
Yeah.
Until we burn this down.
Yeah. Let's destroy vacation, get
Yeah.
divorced, like just
I
all the
have done
things.
it.
Yeah.
I've done it. Yeah.
And it's so weird though,
Uh,
because back in the day, I could not remember the consequences. I could not recall that in that
right.
moment. But now it's like, oh yeah, I totally remember all of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. What's a tool that you use in a moment where you're feeling triggered? Because a lot of people are just like serenity prayer or this, or I call someone, I go to a meeting, I do this, I go for a walk, whatever. Like, what's your like kind of oh shit handle when you're just like, I'm about to freak out?
I think in the moment, I realized the other day, like I haven't thrown some shit in a long time. Like I don't think I've broken anything in a long time. Because I can throw some stuff. And I don't think I've done that in a while. I wanted to, but I haven't. I think the first thing, and it is not always immediate, so I don't want to sound like I got it so together, is I will ask God just for help. Like, please help me. And often, like, me and God, that's not enough. And so I think today, probably my sponsor. Like, if I've prayed about it and I still just, like, can't get it together, I'll usually call my sponsor. I think prayer and meditation, and I've gotten away from it, and I'm seeing the results this week of like, oh yeah, I need to do that. I think those keep me from getting there so quick, so often. But I still get there. And so in the moment, it's usually prayer. And if I'm in something that I can't work out myself, like I'll call my sponsor.
Yeah. I love that. I like practical things for in the moment. And then once you get past that moment of danger, then yeah, we can go do other things. And for me, I write. I definitely do say, God, please help me, or please get me out of my way, or something like that. It's just this like cry for help moment where I know that I cannot make decisions based on where I am mentally in that moment. Because that's not a good, place to be. And when I ask for help, or I pray, or I go for a walk and I'm with nature, or whatever it is, I suddenly, it's like, it's just a diversion, right? I need to snap out of what I'm in and looking to God or to other people in the program, or even writing about what I'm feeling. It gets me out of that moment. But I love the fact that you bring up meditation too, because it has this like really subtle residual benefit that you don't really notice any gains, right? Nothing magical happens, but I notice that I'm different in traffic, or I'm different. Things don't irritate me as much with work stuff or whatever when I'm doing it consistently. And then when I'm not, I start noticing that everything is just irritating the shit out of me, And I'm like, I'm pretty sure none of that changed. None of this stuff changed. It's me. But calling my sponsor too, just to like run my ideas by my sponsor. And she'll just be like, wow, that's a terrible idea. And I'm like, yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Because I need someone to tell me the truth. And we know, I can speak for myself, but like my mind will justify anything that I want to do. And I can make it make perfect sense. And so I need someone else to be like, okay, but why? Or why do you want to change? Yeah, you're nuts. You need to calm down and don't make decisions right now. So is humor something that you've always had a knack for? Like, are you just funny, or were you raised by funny people? Do you use it to deflect from things that you feel uncomfortable about? Like what? Because my thing is like, I'm a smart ass. I'm a super sarcastic. I've always been that way. My whole family's that way, but we use it to like not deal with stuff, I think. Sometimes.
Yeah. Right.
So like, but you're funny, and you say things that I don't think you're even trying to be funny sometimes. And I'm just dying laughing. And I'm like, this is so like, what is that with you?
I mean, I guess, so like people say I'm funny, right? And I know that I like to make people laugh, but I don't, just because I have trouble seeing like, obviously I still have growth, because like it's weird for me to think of myself as funny. Also, you said you're funny and you're trying not to be, so that makes me think people are laughing at me, not with me. But
you just say things because you say things that like are so funny, but you don't laugh. You're not laughing. You're not trying to make a joke. It was just something that you were just saying or some observation that you made. And even in meetings, I couldn't even sit next to you or look at you because
Yeah, we
we
did
would
laugh a
start
lot in
laughing.
meetings. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
I don't remember. That's an interesting question. Did I grow up with funny people? I don't think I did. Like growing up it just wasn't, there wasn't a lot of laughter. So it did not come from that. Like it wasn't that. I know that I like to make people laugh, sometimes to the extreme as far as like not being real, right? And I've gotten better about it, but like, I just want to be the one that's fun and funny, never want to be a downer.
Right.
And so, and yes, I've been told that I use it to deflect. Like I was told that in treatment, it's like one of my counselors there, she was like, like you're funny and I love that part about you. And also you use it to deflect. And so that's true. But I think too, like there are times, and I notice it in class a lot, being in class right now, I will think something and I'll think it's funny. And so I just think that everybody else needs to hear what I think is so funny. Like it'll just be like just during, if somebody says something, I can't think of an example, but I'll just make a comment. And then some people might laugh. They get me more now. I think before they were like, should we laugh? Should we? I don't know. But then I will obsess about it after. Like I just blurt shit out. And then I'm like, then I'll obsess later about, oh, you shouldn't have said that. Stupid.
How are you perceived? Why did I say that out loud?
Right. But no, I think, and I know that we, like in our house, we joke a lot. We laugh a lot. I think my kids are really funny. It is really dark and inappropriate at times. Like there are people, if they heard the things we say, they would be like, what the fuck? Like, why would you? We know we're joking. The one thing is like, I don't like it. I don't want my kids being mean. I don't want to be mean. So it's not like at other people's expense as far as making fun of people. Right. Not that we don't tease each other, but I never want to be mean because I hate that.
That's kind of how it's funny because my daughter and I have a very similar sense of humor and other people don't get it at all. In fact, they would just be like, oh my gosh, you're like,
that's really fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's dark and it's funny, but like our whole family jokes a lot. And the more we love each other, the more I love you, the more I'm probably going to make fun of you and vice versa, but never in a mean way. Like it has to be funny, like above the belt. Right. Like, but we have in our past and in, marriages and different relationships in my family and whatnot, where you take that to a different level where it is mean, and it's disguised as a joke, but it's actually like a dig or whatever. Right. And like, but your humor has always just been like, off the cuff. And I'm the same way. I blurt things out. I say things in work meetings that no normal person would ever say out loud. I just want to be myself. I just want to be able to be my real self. And I'm so tired of like censoring myself.
And that is who I am. Like that, when I blurt that shit out, like that's me.
Yes. Yeah. And that's okay with me. And like, I'd rather show up as myself and get, looks or get judged than to like pretend to be some serious person or some person who, is always so buttoned up, because that's not who I am. Right. Like, and I think it makes you more lovable and more relatable because people can see that you're just being your actual, self. And I just think it's one of the most endearing qualities about you. And I've always appreciated it. So I'm glad that you're doing that and that you're raising kids that are like that too. Cause the world, I think, sometimes tries to, you know what I mean? There's so much decorum. There's so many rules and like how you should act and what you should say and shouldn't say and what's supposed to be funny and what's not funny and whatever. And like, there's this point where you're just like, yeah, but like every person has their own interpretation. But I guess the reason I asked that question too is because comedians, for example, are some of the most, they have the darkest shit going on the inside, but they're like hilarious.
Depressed,
And so, and they're struggling with addiction and suicidal ideation and all this stuff behind the scenes. But when they're on stage, you're like, this person is so funny. And so I always wonder how that's connected, because there's a lot of people in recovery that are really funny. And sometimes we use it as armor, and sometimes we just, are enjoying ourselves. And sometimes it's hard to tell.
And I think that has been me at times, right? Like, just everything's great and, laughing all the time. Whereas now when things are hard, and I think about like at school, I still get really embarrassed about my emotions, which is unfortunate because I have a lot of them. And I get embarrassed about it, but I don't really hide it anymore. Like, I'll have a lot of feelings about it after that everybody saw it, or that not everybody, but like I'm thinking about my supervisor in my internship and stuff. But that's what I have to do to be able to get through it and to survive this and know how to handle it in the future. And so I'm more willing to let people see those parts of me too.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that, because I'm the same way. I feel like it's like weak or embarrassing to let my feelings show. And if you think about it out in the world, on TV or wherever, if someone starts crying in a conversation, the first thing we say is, I'm sorry. And I don't know why we're like that as a society, why we immediately apologize for showing that vulnerability. Why would
I did that the other day?
I do it all the time. When I start crying, I'm like, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm crying.
I'm so sorry. It's because we're taught we're not supposed to make other people feel uncomfortable.
That's what I was thinking. It makes the discomfort for other people. Yeah.
And when I lost my pop a couple of years ago, when he was going through hospice and hospitals and all the things, and I cried a lot. I cried a lot in meetings. I cried at work. I cried everywhere, and I couldn't help it. And I apologized a lot. And then one day I just stopped apologizing, because, this is how I feel. And I had spent a lifetime trying to keep all that down, using chemicals to just like not have to feel any of it. And now, and I still, after, I'll feel embarrassed, or I'll just be like, oh God.
Now they know you're weak.
Like now everybody knows that I'm vulnerable and whatever. But yeah, that's so.
I had my therapist. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Tell me.
I've been going back to a therapist that I've seen on and on throughout my life, but I saw her when I was 13. Like, that was the first time I saw her. So she knew me. She's known me like through all the shit.
Wow.
And she told me recently, she was like, you have always been this really interesting combination of tough as nails and really vulnerable. It's like these two, and that's what it feels like. It's like, in some ways, I feel like I have to present that I'm tough, or, I'm so afraid of looking weak. But then I know that I have all these really raw emotions most of the time.
Yeah.
And I think I'm getting a little bit more, like, I'm starting to kind of get that, like, that doesn't mean weakness, right? Because I always associated that with weakness. And people are seeing it more. Like, I'm not as ashamed of it.
And as a counselor, like, that's what you're trying to get people to do, is to be vulnerable and to be comfortable with that. And I think this is why we got along right off the bat and have stayed in touch, is we have a lot of things in common, and we have a lot of differences too. But I think, like, I used to just think I was tough and that was it. I was raised to think that. I was raised to think that crying or apologizing or whatever was weakness, and we don't do that in this family, and we're not going to talk about feelings and like figure it out, like you'll be fine type of rub some dirt on it. Like, that's how we were raised. And what I realized was that I'm more sensitive and vulnerable than pretty much anybody I know. And so because of that, my armor has just got harder and bigger and more over the years, because I know how I really am. And I was like, if people find out that my gruff exterior as this like tough bitch is literally so far from who I actually am, I mean, I will clap back. I am
Right.
not afraid to, if you want to come at me or whatever, I can talk a big game, but deep down inside, I'm a lot more sensitive than I ever thought. And recovery continues to just peel that back. And I just feel more tender and more open. And then when you lose a parent or you go through big
Mm-hmm.
life stuff sober and you're forced to just sit there and feel all that stuff and you can't run
Right.
away from it, then you're just not as scared of it anymore because, I mean, like you were saying earlier, as a parent, you're just present. And that is all the feelings. There's this
Right.
spectrum. And we don't get to just do the fun stuff and the good stuff. Like that means that we've got to be there
Right.
for all of it. And, you know, I think it was really hard for my ego, but it was also hard to realize that I'm not who I thought I was. And so
See,
now
I
I'm
thought I
doing,
was the
yeah,
go
the
ahead.
opposite.
I was the like I grew up like all my life I thought that I was perceived by other people as weak because I knew how much things hurt.
Yeah.
And so I thought everybody saw me as weak. And I remember the first time it was Julie. She said I was really guarded. And I came home and I was like, Jeff, Julie said I'm guarded. He was like, no shit. Like, so I had this perception that like people saw me, that I thought that I showed all this emotion all the time.
Yeah.
And I hated it. I hated it. I thought it was weak. And I thought that that's what other people saw. And instead, and since I worked so hard to hide it, that wasn't what I showed at all, but I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's crazy when you hear other people's, and recovery is really good about that, right? It's these heart-shaped mirrors that reflect you back to yourself, and you start to realize like, oh, the way I'm perceived and the way I actually am or the way I feel. And I think now the part that I'm at in my journey is like unlearning a lot of stuff and then
Mm,
also disassembling all that armor, right? Like slowly
right.
but surely, brick by brick, I'm starting to take that stuff away. And I'll always be
Yeah.
somewhat guarded because when you've been wounded and stuff, there's always a little bit of fear. But it's like I guess Brene Brown or lots of people talk about it that if you if you numb out or protect from the joy, I mean, from the hard stuff, you're doing the same from the joy. And so it's like I've missed a
Right.
lot, even in recovery, because I stayed so protected and I
Mm-hmm.
just wouldn't open myself all the way up. And I think kind of to what you're talking about, sounds like you're in the middle of the same journey of slowly but surely realizing like it's okay. It's okay to let people see that side of yourself, even though it still
Right.
feels weird.
Gross.
Um, yeah, and recovery makes us we sit in rooms and we talk about things that we definitely don't want to talk about a lot of times to strangers, and so you get to practice like how that
Yep.
feels. How do you like have fun now? Like if you're gonna blow off steam or you're just like I need some fun, like what do you do? Because I remember when I got sober I was just like, what am I gonna do for fun, really?
Um, so I guess fun for me isn't like excitement.
Yeah.
It's doing things. Life is so crazy right now that if I like I don't want to go, it's not usually something big.
Yeah.
Um, I have been playing a lot of basketball, like just shooting baskets because
Okay.
I all my life I've loved that. Like, so I like to turn on my music and go outside and shoot baskets. I did it yesterday. Um, the sun, like we had a warm day yesterday. It was 90. It's fucking cold today. Um, being out in the sun. I've started practicing guitar lately, and so I'm trying to learn that.
I did
Um,
not know that.
I'm really shit. I'm really shitty at it, but like I can do it forever. And I think that I hear songs nobody else does, but I hear them. And then if I've got like a bunch of like pent up energy where that just like I think the
Hmm.
bike, like the Peloton, getting on that and
Yeah.
just almost dying is always
Yeah.
helpful. So yeah,
That's
it's
good.
things like that. It's not excitement for me.
Yeah. For me too. It's funny. It's funny. It's like, how do you define fun? But anything that has to do with big productions it's the opposite of what I
No,
consider
that's not
fun
fun.
anymore. And even people are like, oh, travel this and travel that. I hate traveling. It stresses me out so much. And like,
Yep.
I already have to travel for work, but then the thought of taking a vacation for fun, I'm just like, oh, I have to leave my house and get on a plane and like leave my dogs
Right.
and spend all this. It's so
Yep.
like for me, the idea of fun is literally like, yeah, being in the sun or, you know, going to my niece's softball games or hanging out with my daughter. It's just the most simple
Yes.
stuff. And music's always part of everything for me. That is just
Yep.
like the theme. There always has to be music. Okay. Basketball, guitar. Okay. Sun. I didn't
And
know
I
you were
do
trying.
love you said your nieces. I love to go into my kids' events, like
Yeah.
wrestling's
Yeah.
about to start, and I love to watch them and their stuff.
And Sarah's a grown up now. She's launched and all that. And I only have the one kid. So like, that's another thing that too, that's kind of like, oh, that was a big part of my life is like going to all her competitions and you're just involved in
Right.
that and then they're gone. And, but I think too, thinking about, being able to blow off steam. I mean, when I'm pent up with a bunch of rage, which happens more often than I, you know, care to admit, but you know, it's like that for me, it's CrossFit, for you, it's the bike, but it's that same, it's just like, there's a pressure valve that I need to just
Yeah.
work myself into almost, you know, dying. Like you said, it's like,
Yes. Right.
okay, now I'm so exhausted that I can't be angry. I'm going to get some good sleep and whatnot. So
Because
yeah.
I only know how to do it until I feel like I'm going to puke. Like I've not found how I don't know how to do it and not feel like I'm going to throw up after. I think you don't go as hard, but I don't know what that, like, how do you do that? I don't know.
Me neither. So we're still, yeah. What would you say is, we'll kind of end on this because a lot of the questions I had kind of lined up, we've answered throughout the course of the conversation, but this podcast, I don't know that you know a whole lot about it in terms of what I talk to people about, but a lot of people who listen to it or watch it are not sober. They are thinking about it. They're sober curious. Maybe they did AA and now they're looking for, you know. So what is the best piece of advice for newcomers or people considering trying out the sober life? Like what, and not necessarily 12-step, just changing their relationship with alcohol, essentially. What would be a piece of advice that you would give or that really helped you?
I mean, in some ways it's hard for me to talk about just because I think there are a million ways to get sober. And I don't fully understand I don't fully understand wanting to get sober if it's not causing huge problems in your life, right? Because I don't understand people, like, I still today, I as grateful as I am to be sober and to be present, like I am, I would never say that I wouldn't like the feeling of being drunk. Like I haven't gotten to a place where I don't think that would feel great. It's just not worth it anymore.
Exactly.
And so, and I don't understand people who don't like that. I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. You know, they're starting to feel it. And so they're not going to drink anymore. I'm like, why are you doing it then? And so, but I also get that everyone doesn't have that same, that probably means I'm an alcoholic, right? So, that there could be other people who, and I see them, that it's more just kind of problematic. And so they maybe don't need the consequences that I do in order to stop. And, today I think the biggest thing is being present. Right. And I feel like I'm around drinking a pretty fair amount. And I'm not, because it's everywhere. Like even our church thing that we have coming up, it's all about drinking. And so what I've noticed in talking to people is, while forgive the term because I hate it, it is a social lubricant. Sorry. And so it can feel like it makes conversations better, right? I just said lubricant. I
can't.
But
okay. I'm 14. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, me too. But like they're not real conversations. And so when I'm, even at family stuff and we got a wedding next weekend, it's like, I'm going to be talking to people who it's going to be easy conversation, right? If they're going to be drinking, but it's not like a real interaction.
Right.
And so I think that's true for people who maybe don't have a problem with drinking, right? But it's so much a part of what they do that it really is actually nice to have real interactions and like to be present with people. And so I think for me, that would maybe be a motivation for someone who isn't, who thinks that you need it for everything. I think it makes things more real in a good way. And, as far as somebody who is trying to go to meetings or something like that and maybe is struggling, I would just say, like, keep coming back and don't decide whether or not it's a good fit based on one meeting, whether or not you like it or don't like it. Right. And at the end of the meeting, we always say, keep coming back. It works if you work it. I've quit saying that because it just wasn't true for me. And so I don't want to, I can't bring myself to say it. Yeah. So I just say, keep coming back. Like, because I think that's not enough. But if you're really doing the deal and really trying, like, I think just keep showing up.
It's the best advice because that consistency pays off. And that may not be the thing that works, but you will get to a point where you start to learn what is going to be the thing for you, whether it's therapy or it's a different meeting or it's a different combination of things. And I feel the same way as you do and I say this all the time, I'm present. And when I'm in sorrow, I can feel that sorrow all the way. And I also feel that like unfiltered joy that comes. But also if I have a belly laugh, like it's a real belly laugh, it is not chemically induced. Like if I'm connecting with another person, like we're connecting on, and, that can be difficult when you have friends or a lover or something that is drinking because like your experiences are very different, right? If you're sober and you're not sober,
like I'm here and you're not,
we're talking or we're sleeping together or we're doing this or we're doing that, like we're on different planes and it's a weird disconnected feeling, and so there's a lot to be said for that, for being present and for having conversations that are real. But I feel the same too about like when people are like, I just want to quit drinking for a while because, I like miss workouts sometimes and I'm not performing at work as well as I would like. And I'm just like, oh, please, what? Why would you quit drinking over that? Like,
I think maybe they're not alcoholics, right?
No, yeah. But for me, like you were saying, my consequences had to be so dire that I literally,
because I fucking love to drink so much though. That's why I can't understand it. It's
100%. Yes.
I still love it, right? I mean, I didn't get to a point where I didn't love that part.
No.
It just
I think
came with a huge price.
The consequences got bigger and the pleasure got smaller, and at some point you just can't. Hard to justify at some point. But there were many years where the pleasure far outweighed the consequences, and for me, it was a trade-off. And then it wasn't, right? And but when people are trying to quit drinking over like missing a workout, I'm like, oh my gosh, what? Like, but that's me because
at the same time, like I don't want to be judging that. Like it's like it's just our experiences are so different. Because good for you because I would love to have more people that I'm talking to who are there with me, even if the conversation is more uncomfortable, right?
And you know what? They're earlier maybe in the process. Maybe they were going to get to where we got to. And it's just starting to, and I know a lot of people like that, like they're starting to see signs, or they get home and they pour a glass of wine and they don't really want one or need one necessarily. They just do it because it's what they do. Or you drink at brunch on Saturday with your friends because that's what you've done for years. And then you have a hangover the next day and that's not what you intended to have happen. So I understand. And I wish I had caught some of the signs sooner in my own experience. But, of course that's
mine couldn't have come any sooner. Like,
you were a child. But I think too, like just hearing all the things that you've been through, but also the fact that you kept coming back. And that's why, you finally kind of landed in a place that you found a combination of things that worked for you.
Right.
And if you had given up, then who knows what would be
Right.
happening right now. So
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for agreeing to do this. And it makes me feel so happy that you're out in the world counseling people, seriously, and that you're helping
Yep.
and that you've been through it. And so you can offer a certain type of love and empathy that other people may not be able to, and that you hopefully infuse it with, humor and that's just that you're getting to enjoy your kids and your
Yeah.
life. And I just
Life
really
is good.
appreciate you.
Thanks
Yeah,
for asking me to do it. It's good
of
to see your
course.
face.
I know how much you love to talk about your feelings, so I really wanted to invite you on here to do that. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Amanda.